Change in high gear in East Europe. Mass protest in Czechoslovakia with police violence. 10,000 marchers in Bulgaria. And a new reform cabinet in East Germany. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. The winds of change stirred up by Moscow are whipping through Eastern Europe today like so many tornadoes. The premier of East Germany named a new cabinet with more than a third of the posts going to non-communists. The Parliament of Bulgaria elected a new president and denounced the old leader, while 10,000 Bulgarians rallied outside to support the reforms. And thousands more marched and fought with police next door in Czechoslovakia, building pressure on the hardline government there to reform more and more quickly. From Prague, correspondent Richard Threlkeld begins our report tonight on the changing face of communism.
It started as a government-approved student demonstration to commemorate the Czech rebellion against the Nazis, but it quickly turned into an angry protest against the hardline communist leadership. Svobodu, they shouted, freedom. When the speaker of the official student union tried to defend the regime, they booed him down. Instead, this was what they wanted to hear. For freedom, you must fight, he says, but you cannot live without it. By nightfall, it had become one of the biggest anti-government demonstrations here yet. Marchers shouting what amounts to heresy, calling on the government to resign, and chanting, Jakeš must go, a reference to the unpopular Czech Communist Party boss. The candles they carried were in memory, they said, of the Chinese students who died in Tiananmen Square. Later, when thousands of the marchers and bystanders who joined them moved toward the city center, they were attacked by police and militia units. Long into the night, Prague's downtown streets were the scene of violent confrontation. There were scores of arrests and dozens of protesters injured. Those Czechs who had marched and those who had merely witnessed the violent police retaliation were stunned and furious.
I saw they were beating many children. The whole nation feels the same.
Angry?
Well, angry and sad.
This is the second big demonstration against the communist regime here in Prague in the last 3 weeks, and by far the most violent. The Czech people have lived patiently for 41 years under communist rule. After tonight, it's obvious their patience is beginning to run out. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, Prague.
Finally, today, Bulgarians dared to celebrate the transformation of their government from repression to reform. They dared to cheer as they smashed a picture of Todor Zhivkov, the old hardline Communist Party boss, who was abruptly forced to resign a week ago. What to Western eyes looked like just another demonstration, to Bulgarians was something historic. Nothing like it had happened for more than 40 years. The rally was organized by party hacks who had figured out it was time to join the perestroika bandwagon. But it quickly became a spontaneous expression by ordinary people testing their new freedom. This was the reaction when they were told to go home.
People are celebrating. They are very happy because we have closed a whole era in the history of Bulgaria.
The era of Zhivkov ended today when the new Communist Party leader, Petar Mladenov, arrived at Bulgaria's parliament to be voted head of state. Zhivkov was stripped of the post, the last vestige of his power. In his acceptance speech, Mladenov promised sweeping reforms, a sign that he meant it. The entire session was shown live on television, something that's never happened before. It was the first time most Bulgarians had ever seen the inside of their parliament. Another first, Mladenov pressing the flesh. Astonished, people shook their new leader's hand, hoping a new era had really arrived. Martha Teichner, CBS News, Sofia.
East Germany's new premier nominated a cabinet of reformers today and promised to revamp the communist state with more civil rights for the people and more free enterprise in the marketplace. Susan Spencer is in Berlin.
The crush of international reporters outside the East German parliament was unheard of, and so was what happened inside, as the new prime minister proposed non-communists for a third of the cabinet and called for a limited experiment with private enterprise. But socialism, everyone agreed, is not dead.
No.
What about free elections in the country? Will we see that?
Yes, we will discuss also about this theme.
While the East Germans discussed, the West Germans debated how to deal with all the East Germans gearing up for another great weekend in the West.
So probably first day will be over 1 million, and second day on Sunday will be have another 1 million.
But more than 9 million East Germans, half the population, now have applied for visas to visit the West. In West Berlin, merchants stocked up, especially with bananas, an East German favorite. And the city brought in scores of buses from other parts of the country.
We must drive from the bus driver from Munich, Frankfurt, or Hanover, Hamburg.
West Germany has even set up an emergency telephone hotline for the repair of Trabants, the much maligned East German car, thousands of which already are creeping across the border. Special teams from the German Auto Club were zipping in today to get things started. Handling this weekend's other problems may not be so easy. Officials announced late this afternoon that 3 million people crossed from east to west today. Susan Spencer, CBS News, West Berlin.
Mikhail Gorbachev said today that the Soviet Union might someday give up one-party communist rule. Answering questions from a group of students, Gorbachev said the party is currently the only force capable of governing Soviet society, but he said that even the party's role could be reassessed in the future. Still to come on your CBS Evening News, Mark Phillips on a big star, cocaine, and professional football. And John Blackstone on the little ones a month after the big quake.
I pledge allegiance to the flag. We want jobs.
And we'll stay on strike till we get a fair contract.
Now for the latest developments on the story that has Capitol Hill up in arms.
We're not going to try to control what our people read and say and think.
A government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I prefer the latter.
Mark my words, the end of the world is at hand. The end is near.
I'm about had it.
The freedom to say and think what we believe, to express our individuality and diversity. That's our birthright. And it's ensured by this document. Join us and the National Archives in celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights.
New honey-made Graham Snacks are so popular, bees have to make so much honey, they're protesting.
Sure, these new honey-made Graham Snacks are delicious and wholesome, but give us bees a break. Stop eating so many. What are you doing? You know how many bee hours go into one box? Put that down.
Relax, have a snack.
You guys!
Hey, apple cinnamon's not bad. Got any honey and oat bran?
New honey-made honeycomb Graham Snacks. They've got everyone buzzing.
The Bush administration today called on the government of El Salvador to find and punish those who murdered 6 Jesuit priests in the Salvadorian capital yesterday. The atrocity set off new calls in Congress for a suspension of U.S. aid to the embattled right-wing government. Fighting in San Salvador tapered off somewhat today, but it claimed another innocent victim. Correspondent Juan Vasquez begins our coverage. We apologize for the unavoidably poor sound quality of this late satellite transmission.
British journalist David Blundy died on the operating table this afternoon, hours after he was shot in the chest. Blundy and other journalists were covering the fighting in a suburb of the capital when he was hit.
Seemed perfectly calm, although we could hear shooting in the distance. And then suddenly a couple of shots broke out and we all hit the ground. And he fell wounded.
I'm absolutely appalled. It's yet another senseless act in the barbarity that's going on in this country at the moment. It's simply got to stop for the sake of the people of this country.
But the door to peace in El Salvador remains closed. Today, Army troops rolled deeper into the ravaged neighborhood of Zacamil. House by house, step by step, the Army is regaining control. Parts of the neighborhood were shattered by Air Force rockets and guerrilla mortars. As they retreated, the rebels left behind their dead. Hundreds, according to the Army, their weapons, their ammunition, even their medicine. One soldier found rebel explosives buried in the field. In a nearby area, people were allowed to leave for the first time in 3 days, many to buy food. The fighting in the capital has shattered what little hope of peace there was in El Salvador. The assassination of 6 Jesuit priests yesterday has intensified the climate of terror. Former presidential candidate Fidel Chavez Mena blamed right-wing death squads for the killings.
I am confident that whether this was done by the animals on the right or the animals on the left, the government of President Cristiani will do what you do in a democratic process, which is find out who these people are and bring them to justice.
At a mass for the victims today, a message from Pope John Paul II called it a horrible assassination. An assassination that many fear is just the beginning of a right-wing offensive against anyone considered an enemy. Juan Vasquez, CBS News, San Salvador.
In this country, too, there was grief and a sense of outrage as mourners quietly prayed for the victims of the Jesuit massacre and as protesters loudly demanded a cutoff of military aid to El Salvador.
These people were killed with U.S. bullets, paid for by U.S. citizens who don't know what's happening with their money.
The United States props up the El Salvadoran government, pays for much of the army. Even the investigative team looking into the massacre is funded by the United States.
It is conducting a forensic examination of this crime, and they have, as my understanding, already taken samples from the scene and will conduct the autopsies.
The chance, then, that the Salvadoran army did the killing raised the awful question in Washington of whether the United States indirectly subsidized the massacre. That issue led protesters to disrupt the Senate hearing on the conflict and led some senators to call for an immediate suspension of aid.
There was no U.S. national security interest in using our taxpayer dollars to bankroll such a conflict.
We need ourselves to be considering what we are achieving for the dollars that we spend.
The administration, however, wants to buy time. It sees a freely elected president at least promising an investigation and for now wants to give Cristiani a chance.
He also said if members of the armed forces are found to be involved, they will feel the full weight of the law. The United States expects him to meet that commitment.
For now, Cristiani is riding on his personal credibility in Washington because his party's reputation is one long association with the death squads. That puts pressure on Cristiani to prosecute someone for the massacre, if only to keep his pipeline of dollars alive. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, the White House.
U.S. Senate leaders asked President Bush today to withdraw and replace his nominee for a top natural resources job in the Agriculture Department. They said there was no way the current nominee, James Cason, would win Senate confirmation. Cason is strongly opposed by environmental groups. They say he showed a clear preference for industrial development over conservation while working at the Interior Department.
Send up a crow's foot. Give me an app check.
There's a place in the friendly skies where not everyone's so friendly.
Stop. Hold it. I need 3 hours minimum. Check it out.
Over 9,000 mechanics of United Airlines work here.
Give me a mini grinder.
They're picky, fussy, stubborn. But if you fly, they're the best friends you'll ever have. United, rededicated to giving you the service you deserve. Come fly the friendly skies.
These are oats. Something you've been hearing quite a lot about lately. But while some cereals turn oats into processed oat flour, new oat bake from Kellogg's uses only whole oats. Then we simply bake them with nuts, raisins, and spices for the first cereal that combines the goodness of whole oats with the goodness of baked taste. New Kellogg's Oat Bake, the whole oat cereal with the crunchy baked taste.
Have you ever wondered what a baggage handler might take on vacation? What everyone should take. Samsonite's glutton for punishment. Put a luggage cart in a suitcase, and what do you get? Samsonite's Piggyback. It's particularly handy on long trips like the one from your car to the ticket counter.
More tonight on the Capitol Hill ethics investigation story that CBS News chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer first broke on this broadcast last night. The Senate Ethics Committee met tonight about appointing a special counsel for 2 investigations. One investigation centering on New York Senator Alphonse D'Amato's possible role in the HUD mess. The other involving Senator Glenn of Ohio, Senators McCain and DeConcini of Arizona, Cranston of California, and Riegel of Michigan, is in connection with a $2 billion savings and loan disaster. From Capitol Hill, Bob Schieffer has the latest now in this follow-up report. Bob?
Dan, members of the Ethics Committee began their meeting late this evening working out the details on how Washington lawyer Robert Bennett will look first into the relationship of Senator D'Amato and HUD, the scandal-plagued agency, and whether the other 5 used undue influence on banking regulators on behalf of Charles Keating, the owner of the huge Lincoln Savings and Loan, which collapsed earlier this year. All of this came just a day after federal agents seized 2 luxury hotels in Phoenix, also owned by Keating, and CBS News learns the FBI is now probing the possibility that Keating may have committed criminal acts in his dealings with federal officials. Keating funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars into the senators' campaigns and pet political causes. Much of the Senate investigation centers on an April 1987 meeting between Edwin Gray, then the nation's top savings and loan regulator, and DeConcini, Glenn, McCain, and Cranston. Gray says he was urged to relax regulations on Keating's failing Lincoln savings.
I was told not to bring staff. These senators had no staff. Deniability was built into that meeting from the beginning.
The senators say they urged nothing more than a fair hearing, but 2 of them conceded today the meeting looks bad in hindsight.
Had I known then what I know now, I would not have interceded.
The appearance of the meeting of 5 senators made me very nervous.
Glenn of Ohio said he had no regrets.
If I had the same set of facts today in that same time frame, I would do the same thing.
The separate D'Amato probe focuses on whether federally subsidized HUD housing programs like this one in D'Amato's hometown were steered by political pressure to the senator's friends and relatives. Today, D'Amato said he was just working for his state.
So did I use my clout for my people? Yes.
Bennett, the lawyer who'll run the probe, is a brother of national drug czar William Bennett, but even with his appointment, this investigation, sources close to the committee say, is in the very early stages. Dan?
Thanks, Bob. President Bush signed legislation today providing for a slow increase in the national minimum wage from $3.35 an hour to $4.25 an hour by April 1991. Mr. Bush vetoed a larger increase in the minimum wage earlier this year. This is the first minimum wage increase at all since 1981. It's taken members of both houses of Congress only 2 days to near final action on the latest plan for raising their own pay, a bill providing a 2-stage 33% pay raise for Congress members, federal judges, and other government officials. The bill would also limit Congress members' outside income. Before giving final approval, senators were widely expected to vote to exclude themselves from this pay raise. So far tonight, that has not happened. President Bush opened the holiday season today with a photo opportunity appearance in the White House Rose Garden with the turkey, a 50-pound Tom who turned out to be quite a talker in his own right. The talking turkey was given a presidential pardon anyway and sent off, we are told, to a petting farm for children.
To leap beyond the world of worry. 50% of the Fortune 500 have placed their trust in the travelers to help provide financial peace of mind. You're better off under the umbrella.
This business may seem easy, but try doing this with minor arthritis pain. For years I took aspirin, but now there's Advil. It gives me hours of relief, yet it's gentler to my stomach than aspirin. Advil, advanced medicine for pain.
That shredded wheat sure is nutritious. How's it taste?
Exactly how it looks, actually.
Then try Kellogg's Raisin Squares. Not just shredded wheat, but shredded wheat with real raisin in the middle.
Oh, that'll change the taste, won't it?
Yep, you can do that. Raisin Squares make shredded wheat lusciously delicious.
I definitely detect taste.
Kellogg's Raisin Squares, shredded wheat with taste in every bite.
Taste. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Last year, 6 million people bought a refrigerator 1 year too soon. Introducing the new refrigerator from Maytag. Buy one now, and if it stops working before the year 2000, we'll buy it back. See your Maytag dealer for details. See a Maytag repairman in our commercials. The new refrigerator from Maytag. The dependability people.
Even if you don't follow football, you may know about Dexter Manley, defensive end of the Washington Redskins. That's because even off the field, he has achieved some fame and some notoriety. Now, he's expected to learn tomorrow if he'll be banished for life from the National Football League. Correspondent Mark Phillips explains why.
He could beat Eagles. He could beat Giants. He could beat Broncos. But it seems Dexter Manley, Super Bowl champ, All-Pro, could not beat cocaine.
I think that the last few years he's finally come to grips with it, has gotten a hold of his life, and then to have this relapse, it's really sad.
Dexter Manley, defensive end for the Washington Redskins, whose battle against drugs and against illiteracy had made him more than just a football hero, seems to have run out of chances. Sources say he has violated the National Football League's drug rules and tested positive for the third time.
Is it correct that Mr. Manley does face potentially a permanent ban from football at this time?
That's up to the commissioner.
According to league rules, the commissioner has no choice. For a first offense, the player must join an anti-drug program. Second offense, 30-day suspension. Third time, you're out. The player will be barred from further participation in the NFL, the rule says.
It's my understanding, he'll be dismissed.
Manley would be the third NFL player thrown out for life for drug use. It's a special tragedy for him because he was thought to have beaten his cocaine habit.
I say no to drugs because I think the true war in America today is the war against drugs.
A tragedy also for the man who was brave enough to admit before Congress that he was the product of the football factory education system, that coming out of Oklahoma State University, he could not read.
And I just felt like that I am dumb and I was stupid, and that I didn't have the ability to learn or learn how to read or write.
Dexter Manley's football career with its Super Bowl highs seems about to end now, prematurely and sadly on a low. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Washington.
The government today reported that housing starts, after hitting a 7-year low in September, bounced back a rousing 12% in October to a 3-year high. Analysts said lower interest rates helped spark the comeback, but they doubted there was a major surge in construction ahead. Building permits in October were up 0.7%.
This looks like something my mom would eat. It's kind of quiet, conservative. I don't think I can get into this. I mean, it's just a bunch of flakes. It doesn't taste the way it looks. I like the way it crunches. Maybe it's good because it's simple. Wait, don't tell me. I'm just like my mother.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Corn Flakes?
Taste them again for the first time. And for a limited time, taste them again for just 99 cents.
Victor Kayam, what's the ultimate shaving gift?
The Remington Microscreen Ultimate. Its 2 screens shave as close as the blade or your money back. No other shaver makes that promise.
Now I know why he bought the company.
Remington.
We interrupt this vacation
Charges.
to remind you the Discover card pays you cash back for every charge.
Fabulous.
It pays to Discover.
When you're constipated, you're not yourself. Constipation makes you feel crabby, cranky, slow, and sluggish. Feel more comfortable with Dulcolax. Dulcolax is the only leading laxative with a comfort coating designed to protect your stomach. A comfort coating and overnight relief, so you feel buoyant, bouncy, light, and loving.
In other words, your normal self again.
Dulcolax, the comfort-coated laxative.
The San Francisco earthquake, striking just 1 month ago, claimed more than 60 lives and caused damage estimated at $7 billion. But in the nature of things, the great quake of '89 is a memory to most Americans. But to those living near the quake's epicenter, it remains a presence and a terrifying threat. John Blackstone reports.
For many, morning in the Santa Cruz Mountains means breakfast round a campfire and a GI shower in a tent before heading off to work in Silicon Valley.
I'm an electrical engineer for a computer company.
Running water remains weeks away for hundreds of people here. But the loss of suburban comforts is the least of the problems. Here, at its epicenter, the earthquake shook the mountain and the people so violently the wounds in both are still far from being healed. On the mountain, new landslides threaten. For the residents, memories still disturb.
There's like glasses going off like hand grenades, you know, in our kitchen. And, you know, a 200-pound television was hurled across the room. You know, and our house is like playing tug-of-war and somebody let go. You know, and I have a daughter in my arms that just went hysterical. She thought she was in heaven.
The sunset over the Pacific, the view from the mountains, is one reason people live here. But the fears of that day will not be forgotten.
It brings us all closer together.
Dan Netzley, at work in Silicon Valley, could not reach his family for 12 hours.
Nothing was as important as the family.
His 12-year-old son Trevor was outside when the ground opened up.
When it hit, I was standing right there, and I ran up the drive and I saw this crack forming right in the middle of it. Then after that, I've been afraid to go in the house.
Wife Linda and 10-year-old daughter Leah now spend more time together than ever. Many mothers say that since the earthquake, their children will not leave their side.
I'm a lot more scared.
Every day?
Well, when I'm by myself, I am. It's been really scary.
At schools in the mountains, there are counseling sessions every day.
Ever since the earthquake, if I'm home alone, any noises I hear, like, I just jitter.
How you been doing since then?
Been doing okay, but not getting much sleep.
The shock waves that began here in the Santa Cruz Mountains knocked down houses and highways 50 miles away. But the people who live here felt the full, terrifying force of the earthquake right beneath their feet. Now, geologists warn them, the destruction started by the earthquake could worsen with massive landslides. Whole sections of the mountain are in danger of sliding away in the winter rains.
I got a house poised on the end of a landslide, and I got about 30 houses above me.
Mother Nature is not through with us. She is still rocking and rolling up here.
Under the heading of Facing Your Fears, the youngest now sing about the quake and about life at the epicenter.
We build this place with a smile on our face.
Rebuilding has started in some places, but the earthquake has torn apart the mountain and its people in ways that have not yet been measured. John Blackstone, CBS News in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
And that's part of our world tonight. Bob Schieffer will be here tomorrow. There'll be Saturday night with Connie Chung. Connie will have the news on Sunday evening. I'll see you again Monday. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News. Good night.
Tony Rice ignites #1 Notre Dame as they try to survive the punishing defense of Penn State. The Irish meet the Lions tomorrow.
This is CBS.
Just ahead on 11 News at 6.